Hi there, it's Sig, and welcome back. Today I'm working on a slightly new project. This is eventually going to be a very simple blanket. So we've got my big needles back again. They're out for this one, and once I run out of this yarn here, I'm going to be using more from just my general yarn stash. The only stitch that I'm using here is a knit stitch because it's really basic, and there's like 110 or 115 stitches in one row, so there's a lot going on. So I just have the goal of just like a small blanket. And that's what I'm working on during this little chat of ours. Feel free to go grab your own little craft or, get a drink, some coffee or tea, and, just get comfy. Today's chat is about how Jaws can be read as a queer narrative and why I think it makes the film that much better. So for those of you not in the know, and I guess spoiler alert if you haven't seen Jaws yet, the movie concept is pretty simple. A shark is plaguing the beach town of Amity Island, and it's up to Chief of Police Brody, a war veteran called Quint, and shark scientist Hooper to save the day. As a kid, I was kind of neutral towards Jaws, if I'm honest. My heart at the time was more geared towards Jurassic Park, but growing up and to this day, that movie was always on my television. Seriously, you'd walk into my family room at any given time of the day and find Jaws playing on loop from May to September, and that is almost not a joke. So I've seen this film a lot of times, and I'd seen it so many times before I even noticed the queer narrative hidden within this little nugget of a film. But while rewatching this movie for the billionth time after finding out I was gay, and then again when I figured out I was trans, well, Jaws began to take on a whole different meaning to me. At its core, there's a theme of isolation and being the odd one out that permeates the movie. Each of the three main characters, Quint, Hooper, and Brody, all reflect this theme in a way that resonated so strongly with me that Jaws grew to become one of my favorite films. To this day, when I watch Jaws, I just don't see your average creature feature, but I also see a queer narrative hidden in plain sight. Although it's not a queer-specific thing, I do think that growing up queer has a rather isolated side to it. You feel different, although maybe you don't yet know why, from everyone around you. Oftentimes, you grow up feeling out of place and unable to connect to straight peers who maybe you really want to connect with. I know I would feel alienated a lot growing up, both from family and from friends. What Jaws then offers is not only the reflection of otherness, but to me it represents finding those who will make you feel accepted. There is an end to this isolation you feel when you're young, and that's what Jaws kind of lets you know. It's a promise that things do get better, even if it feels like you're going through hell, or trying to kill a really huge man-eating shark. I'll start with Quint, since he's the oldest of the three main characters. As mentioned, Quint is a war veteran who witnessed a lot of his fellow soldiers get eaten by sharks when their ship was attacked. So that's the shark trauma. Quint as a character lives on the edges of Amityville Island society. You can sort of assume he's not very popular, and even though I think he hunts sharks for a living, no one in the film reaches out to him except when it becomes their only option. And even then, it takes some pushing from Brody. I think his character has the out-of-place nature, similar to both Brody and Hooper, that backs up this idea of a queer underlying narrative. Like Brody and Hooper, he is ignored by society despite being a capable shark hunter who could more or less solve this shark problem pretty easily. To an extent, Quint also reflects how off-putting it is to be alienated day in and day out by straight society. He offers a clear expertise in getting rid of sharks, yet Amityville Island society dismisses him and his ability in favor of other resources. It's not a stretch to say that you can read a frustration in Quint's character that reflects a frustration many young queers who so desperately want to feel a part of their communities often express. The way Quint interacts with Brody and Hooper also reflects this. Quint clocks Brody as an outsider in the line, "I know you, Chief, you don't go in the water." There is a shared nature of the outsider that these two characters bond over. In the same way, Quint knows that Hooper is an outsider and even expresses hostility towards Hooper for not being of a working class, which could be its own video. The dynamic of these three characters can express how anyone can feel alone or isolated in the same way that being queer intersects with many other identities. At the end of the day, despite being so different, Quint, Brody, and Hooper all become in varying degrees friends. The iconic scene on the boat when the three sing, "Show me the way to go home," is proof enough that they all begin to bond. And it's so iconic that I almost just burst out into song singing that, because I sing that all the time in my head.
Show me the way to go home. I'm tired and I wanna go to bed. I had a little drink about an hour ago, and it's got right to my head. Wherever I may roam, by land or sea or foam.
Chief Brody is also a character that represents otherness, as he is an outsider to the society, quite literally. At the start of the film, it's established that Brody has moved to Amity Island from the mainland of New York. He's the new chief of police here on the island, and over the course of the beginning of this movie, something odd is made clear about him. Despite having moved to an island, Brody is afraid of water. It's even mentioned that on the ferry ride over to Amity Island, he stayed in the car. Even before I recognized that I was queer, this narrative of a man afraid of water, yet he's moved to the middle of an island, it really stuck with me. At every turn, Brody is a voice of reason who advocates for the safety of the community, but is often thwarted by the mayor. For example, when the first evidence of Jaws is found and the medical examiner confirms that it has to be a shark attack, Brody wants to close the beaches. He goes out of his way to personally go to some Boy Scouts that have been swimming in the waters that are connected to the ocean, just so that he can make sure that they won't get hurt. But when the mayor finds out, he tells Brody that there's no reason to close the beaches and actually prevents him from doing anything for these scouts. I bring this up because it's indicative to Brody's character. Even if he's afraid, he faces the waters to protect those in his community. It is seen in this scene of him trying to get the scouts out of the water, and is seen again when Hooper convinces Brody to go out on his boat and see if they can find evidence of this shark despite being very afraid. Another aspect of this film is that Brody has to fight against the immovable force of capitalism in the form of the mayor. Brody constantly worries about the safety of his community, and several plot points involve Brody begging the mayor to do anything beyond just ignore this problem. Yet the mayor insists that they can't do anything, especially close the beaches, or else they'd risk 4th of July profits. This eventually leads to Brody having to take the full brunt of the grief of a mother whose son dies later on in the film when the inevitable happens and Jaws attacks again. Brody is even the one who has to push the mayor to hire Quint and send him, Brody, and Hooper out on the boat, only after 3 people at this point have died. So it takes the mayor an insanely long time, and it kind of takes Brody completely losing it after his son was almost killed to actually do anything. So, as they say, screw the mayor. But what makes us also queer? To me, at least, this resonates in the idea that a lot of queer people only want to improve the society that they're in, and yet so many people push back from the outside of the queer community. To me, at least, this resonates in the idea that a lot of queer people want to only improve society at large, but there are so many pushbacks from outside of the queer community that try to prevent this. I also think that, especially in our current day, pushing against the confines of capitalism is something anyone can relate to. There is also something to say about how, by the end of the film, Brody has more or less conquered his fear of the water. He starts the film hesitant to even go on a boat, but through extraordinary circumstances, he rises to the occasion to plunge into the depths of the ocean for his community. It's an empowering story for Brody, as he is the one to deliver the killing blow to Jaws, who I guess you could look at the shark as a metaphor for homophobia, or at least the restriction of society's standards, but maybe that's all a stretch. But I do think that it's an important takeaway from Brody's powerful narrative of this man starts the film off afraid of water, and by the end of it, he has to swim a day to get back to shore. Like Brody and Quint, Hooper shares this space of otherness and being an outsider. He's not a native islander, as Hooper is a scientist who specializes in sharks, and is actually called from the mainland by Brody to come and help out. He's often juxtaposed by the mayor throughout the film. For example, when a tiger shark is caught and labeled as the same shark that has been killing people, Hooper is the one to point out the facts. The tiger shark is just too small to be the culprit in terms of its either bite radius or mouth size or something like that. So like Brody, nobody wants to listen to this, and people ignore this fact. It's even seen later on when he and Brody are confronting the mayor in order to convince him one last time to shut down the beaches for the 4th of July to prevent any other deaths. Hooper is the one insisting that what they have on their hands is a massive shark that will attack again. It's already killed a woman and a little boy at this point in the story, and Hooper is only trying to force reason onto a man narrowly focused on money, and is failing. Like Brody and Quint, Hooper represents a voice of reason juxtaposed against the mayor's capitalistic intentions. The mayor himself in this way then grows to represent society at large, trying to ignore those who don't fit into the mold or aren't adhering to the status quo, i.e. the three main characters of this film. Hooper is an outsider, shunned like his fellow friends, and it is through this shared sanity and otherness that he manages to befriend not only Brody, but also Quint, who at the start of the film is rather hostile to him. Jaws takes on a queer reading when you start to read between the lines and start applying the narratives of the main characters to your own life. Feeling like an outsider, being othered, and denying society's status quo isn't queer specific, but I do think that it's certainly a huge factor in queer life. Not everyone will see Jaws this way, but I like to think that the fact that this film can be seen in different areas is amazing. It's there for me when I need to be reminded that when life feels like a big shark trying to chew me up, I can just blow it up if I need to. It's there to remind me that I can and will find my people even if I'm lonely now. It's a film that can be watched and interpreted in many ways, and it's a classic. Hopefully, it will continue to be a classic for many years to come. At the end of the day, I think there's something really fun about the queer community's ability to look at any piece of media and extrapolate our own experiences where there might not necessarily be anything to relate to. It's not revolutionary, and I certainly would like to see more explicitly queer media, but Jaws was there for me at a time when I was struggling to find myself. This movie was a small stepping stone to figuring myself out, and continues to remind me that, at the end of the day, not only is it good that I'm living my best life, but I'll find people to fill my life with love. Jaws is obviously a very special film to me, one of many, but I'll never forget the first time I watched Jaws with my best friend from college. I remember being very nervous that, for whatever reason, I was insane in thinking that Jaws could have any queer narrative. I was nervous that maybe Jaws was a good film to me, but maybe she wouldn't like it. Cut to current day, and my friend and I have seen Jaws a bunch of times now. It's one of our go-to movies to watch, and every time we comment on the queerness that we both see in this silly little 70s blockbuster. Alright, if you've made it to the end of this little chat, I'd like to thank you. It has been a pleasure talking with you about Jaws, and I made some great progress on this little blanket of mine. If you pulled out a craft to work on yourself, I hope it went well for you, and tell me about it in the comments maybe. Or if you just sat back and relaxed, I hope you were very comfortable and enjoyed our little chat. I can't wait to see what I'll be working on in my next video, maybe this blanket, maybe something else, and I do encourage you to sit down and watch this video with a craft or something. Okay, thank you again for joining me, and I hope the rest of your day is a good one. Good luck out there, okay?